Yesterday, I spoke with a group of psychotherapists who are concerned about the effects that queer theory and transgender ideology are having on vulnerable populations and the harmful effect that those are having on the psychotherapeutic community itself. And one of their concerns is really the authoritarian nature of the movement, and anyone who disagrees with the with any of the ideology, with the is threatened with losing their job, is threatened with losing their accreditation. It's all very interesting, and a couple of things. One of them is that I had a wonderful time talking to them because I really love the intersection of psychology and how individual psychology affects society. You know, some of the most influential writers that I've ever read would include Eric Fromm, Robert J. Lifton, R.D. Laing. That's, to use a baseball term, that's in my wheelhouse. I love reading about that stuff and talking about it. Anyway, at one point they asked, how is it that queer theory has so quickly overtaken all these institutions? Because queer theory was really articulated in about 1980 and really kicked in about 1990. And now it is not too much to say that it controls academia, it controls a lot of the medical field, the medical profession, it controls many political parties. It has, and as a side note, one of the things I mentioned yesterday that is just extraordinary to me, and this is one of the ways that queer theory has harmed the psychotherapeutic community, is I was traveling cross country, like driving across Utah or Wyoming or Nevada, one of those three very Western, very empty states late at night. And you remember those days where your choices late at night are either cassettes you've listened to so many times that they're warped, or turning on the AM radio and getting a random station that's bouncing off the ionosphere. So you could be listening to mariachi music out of Monterey at one moment, and the next moment could be some station in Chicago. Anyway, so I'm driving cross country and tired of listening to Climax Blues Band on the cassettes, and I'm listening to Dr. Harvey Rubin, who he's not the point. It was a late night talk show, and he was a psychologist or psychiatrist, I don't remember which, and people would call in with their problems, which is a great way to while away the hours as you're driving across Nevada. And there was this woman called in and said that she had been dating a man, and they broke up because during sex, she said, he wanted her to abuse him. He wanted her to like hit him and to humiliate him. And she said, I had no interest in doing that. And that made me feel really uncomfortable. So we broke up. And then she said a year later, she was walking down the street and she saw him, and she still, she cared for him. So she's like, hey, how you doing? And he said, I am doing great because I found someone who will do what I want sexually. She will punch me, she will choke me, she will slap me, and I am so happy. And so she said, I do care about him, so I wanted to be happy. So, Dr. Harvey Rubin, do you think he really is happy? Do you think this is a really good relationship? And Harvey Rubin's response was, he found someone with complementary sexual neuroses. And complementary sexual neuroses are not really necessarily a good foundation on which to base a relationship. So my guess is that this is not actually good long-term for his emotional health. Okay, that was 1983, 84, 85. If we fast forward to 2021, he would be kicked off the air immediately for kink shaming. And that's how quickly the whole psychotherapeutic community has been captured. At one point, not even that long ago, it would have been recognized that hitting someone during sex might be indicative, might be, as a psychologist friend of mine says, diagnostic. But now, if you even mention it might be diagnostic, diagnostic of what except for sexual liberation? My point is, the question they asked me is, how has it captured everything so fast? So that in 1979, nobody had heard of queer theory. And in 2021, well, in 2018, my publisher dumped me because I critiqued queer theory, and you are not allowed to critique. If you critique queer theory, you lose your job. So how did it move so fast in 40 years? And I didn't really have an answer for that. And this is a question I've thought about for a long time, for many, many years. How has this stuff gone so fast? And a lot of my answer has to do with porn culture has been pushing it. The internet, with its substitution of virtual reality for reality, has been pushing. That makes things change in bad directions very quickly. There are all sorts of course, woman hating at the end of Empire is just exploding. So we can talk about all those things, but then something hit me yesterday. Again, I've been thinking about this for 15 years, but something hit me yesterday I'd never thought of before, which is maybe it's actually not that fast. And what I mean by that is it seems fast to us because we're living it and we can't catch up. But think about this, 1980 to 2020, how much did society change its views on slavery, say, from 1830 to 1870? How much did society's views change on many issues 1870 to 1910? How about 1890 to 1930? I mean, there was an entire world war in between there and the Russian Revolution. How much did psychology itself change from 1880 to 1920? That was the sort of explosion of Freudianism. And how much did psychology change from 1930 to 1970? How much did, for crying out loud, how much did things change in society here, just in general, from 1950 to 1990? And so yes, the internet makes things go faster. Yes, late stage Empire, as things fall apart, makes things change faster. But what I'm getting at with this, and there's no solution here. If you're looking for a solution, this is going to sadly disappoint you with this video. But I had a shift in perspective because I suddenly understand. It's weird because when you look at things personally, they can seem like they're fast changes. But if you take slices out of history, it's like society actually can change, often for the worse, very quickly. And it can change for the better too. Look at attitudes on, say, homosexuality between 1960 and 2000. Or, I've mentioned before that, when my parents got divorced in the late 60s, early 70s, my mom, as a single mother, couldn't get, she had a difficult time getting a credit card in her own name. Not a single mother, but as a divorcee. And that certainly changed from 1970 to 2010. Or my sister, when she went to the Colorado School of Mines and Engineering, she was one of 6 females in her class. It was early 70s. Early 80s, School of Mines was 16% female, which did wonders for the 83%'s dating chances, by the way. Leave that aside. And now I just looked up the other day, and the Colorado School of Mines is 31% female, and that's been in 50 years. So my whole point is that in very specific areas, I mean, capitalism is not going to, I was going to say capitalism is not going to collapse overnight, but if we look at, well, here's another depressing thing. I saw this thing yesterday that really depressed me, which is we are now officially closer to 2050 than we are to 1990. And I think if we were to look at, I think it's very possible that civilization, capitalism could collapse between 2020 and 2050. And so the whole point of this is that, yes, in many ways, social change takes a long, long time, for better and for worse, because queer theory is not for better. Social change can take a long time, but actually, when you look over the whole scope of history, social change can occur pretty damn fast.